Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar show that explores essence and how we tap into that greater sense of self and find our purpose, the thing we came here to do, the thing we're meant for, and then start acting from that place. And this show is meant to inspire you, like we're sitting around the campfire sharing personal stories, because that's how we learn the best. And today, I'm so excited to have Berni Slowey with us. Welcome, Berni.
Hello, Carrie. Thank you so much.
So Berni is awesome because she took a leap of faith like I did and she followed her heart. So, I love hearing this kind of story, Berni, because then I know I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one.
Yes. Yes, if
Yay!
only more of us did it, right?
Only more of us. So little did she know that the difficult transition of abruptly leaving a successful corporate career during an economic downturn, that is some faith, would send this perfectionist, right? Perfectionist, career-driven professional on a quest of self-discovery and ultimately transformation. So her vulnerability, intimacy, and openness you're about to witness, and she helps others share their journeys through just by being who she is. So we're finding that we're all connected through the human experience. We have similar desires. And she created the Burning Journeys coaching and retreats to assist others as a guide on this. Now, this is so cool. She directed, produced, co-wrote, and starred in the award-winning feature-length documentary Berni's Journey. And several people that I know are actually spiritual teachers are in this film. It's so cool, including Jennifer Huff, who you guys saw in another broadcast of mine.
Oh, yeah. A fellow soul sister.
So awesome. So through serendipity, the film unexpectedly followed her personal transformation. So we're going to hear more about that. But this film wasn't actually supposed to be Berni's journey. It was something else. And then, Spirit stepped in as it does. So I know that everyone's now intrigued. We're going to hear more. But start, because you have such an interesting story. So start by sharing a little bit about you and, maybe the first moments of awakening to something bigger, that there is some movement, something bigger at work here in your life.
Sure. It actually started while I was in the corporate world. And so I was in the banking industry for 20 years before I had left during the recession. But I started to have this feeling that there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. And I didn't understand what that meant because I wasn't listening to my intuition. I was surrounded by a lot of numbers people. So everything was very logical and black and white. And so in order for me to survive, I really suppressed a lot of that intuition. I really suppressed any side of the feminine strength. It was all about maintaining this masculine presence in a female body. And so something definitely was calling to me to make a change, but it didn't seem right. As far as I have a really great job, I'm making really good money. And why would I be leaving during the recession? And then what happened initially that really sparked an emotional awakening was that I had 3 miscarriages within 6 months of each other. And as a woman, I think that not only does it play on our emotions, but our physical sense, our spiritual sense. It's questioning the very value of how am I supposed to be a woman if I can't even have these children. And granted, I already had 2 children. I have 2 beautiful boys, but because of the 3 miscarriages in a row, it was like a cosmic 2x4, and it was telling me to wake up. So I think that was really the moment, the 3 miscarriages that really awakened me to, you need to pay attention to what's going on to your body. And it's time for a change.
Wow, that's amazing. First of all, I just want to share my heart with you for that, because I haven't personally been through that experience, but I have some very good friends who have, and I know how challenging that is. And so thank you for vulnerably sharing that with us and sharing your heart. And because there's so many women that will really touch them. So thank you for being so transparent. Now tell us a little bit about more, what was it that you've realized what was your body trying to tell you with this experience?
Well, my body, I think that things represent themselves physically, because I think it's, if you're not listening to your intuition, or those voices that are really trying to guide you to your true life purpose and happiness, it's going to show up in some kind of physical way. And I realized that not only was I I was totally ignoring my heart palpitations. It was the miscarriages that were the emotional wake-up call, right? But what I also realized is that I started to feel really bad about myself. And I knew that I wasn't stepping into my power. And I started to behave differently. I was trying to, instead of really standing in my own grace and power, I started to behave like others because that was a survival mechanism. And I learned that that was like a default because of when I came to the United States as a Vietnamese refugee. It was always about what kind of behavior do I need to emit to survive. So when my mother and I evacuated in 1975, it was April, just before the fall of Saigon, and I'd realized that from the time that we had left Vietnam to the time that we arrived, the stress tolls that I was feeling, I was actually picking up on my mother as well. And so I think that I didn't realize how in tune I was with what everybody else around me was feeling. And so I had lost my sense of self from a very, very early age.
You know what? Thank you for saying that too, because how many of you women out there, this is your experience, where like you're really feeling everybody and everything, and you don't know that it's not all yours. Like you think, we don't know necessarily that that's our mother's stuff that we're feeling, but that entwined feeling, I totally had that because I had a similar, like really rough beginning, like 0 to 5. And what that kind of did was make my mom and I like so energetically entwined and reliant on each other that like when I became an adult, like I finally realized 6 years ago, wait a second, I'm still like completely entwined with my mother. Like I need to disengage, like I need to pull me out and figure out what that is. But yeah, so we get so wrapped up in our parents.
Oh, we do.
During trauma.
And because we're also watching them and how they handle themselves and their trauma. And what I didn't understand as children, and I was 4. So when you talked about 0 to 5, we're still impressionable, right? We're so relying on our parents still for our survival and that the basic need of love, in which at the time that we left, she did not have self-love. She was actually had beaten herself up so much because of the events surrounding her choices with the war and leaving her homeland, that I think she was so lost that she didn't know how to give that love to me. And so I was searching for something and from my mother that I didn't know how to separate that, and felt as though that I just didn't deserve the love.
Well, okay, there's more to that story though, Berni.
Yes, there is. My mother's story and where that came from. So during the war, my mother and I were not alone. I didn't realize this, but my mother had another daughter, my sister, who was not even 2 years old. And at the time I was just turning 4. We were to reunite with my father in the United States. So my father and my mother, he's an American GI, falls in love with this beautiful Vietnamese woman. And because of the chaos, it's eminent that the North Vietnamese are going to come into Saigon, and so we need to leave. So my father had already left, and my mother and I and my sister were going to follow him. But what happened just days before we were to evacuate is that my younger sister was abducted. So she and I were in the courtyard of the apartment building in Saigon, and my aunt comes down the stairs and she's asking where Rose is, and I don't know. And I don't even know that she's my sister, honestly. I just know that she's somebody that's, for whatever reason, connected to. I'm still, that's how young I am. Like I don't even realize my relation to her. And my aunt looks at me and says, well, where is she? We need to find her. Why weren't you watching her? So as we all panic in that moment, and something that stuck with me is that I thought it was my fault.
Yes, we do. We take ownership of that as children. Like we really we think it's our fault. Like we are responsible for this. Oh,
And
such a heavy burden.
It was a big burden, and I didn't understand it. It was just something that I had taken on, because even though my mother had never told me that it was my fault, what I felt was her guilt, and that she had to make a choice, Does she stay in Vietnam and look for the missing daughter, or does she take the daughter that she does have and we go create a new life and an escape? And so I really felt that with her and didn't understand it. And then realizing that what she was dealing with was a lot of guilt and pain. And she stopped loving herself when making that decision, arriving to the United States and having lost a daughter. And so coincidentally, here I'm experiencing my losses with the miscarriages. And so I'm having to almost feel the same pain that my mother did but she had to make a choice, like Sophie's choice, in which, do I stay or do I leave and save the daughter I have? And I think at that moment she turned off that love, and I didn't understand that. And so I really took it as more rejection.
Yeah. I mean, think about being a mother and losing one of your children, how the guilt you're feeling inside, and then the amazing inner resilience it would take to then open-heartedly love your other child that you were able to save. Whew. I mean, that's a tall order for any human being.
I think that the trauma of having to, a number of reasons. I mean, she'd already lost her brother to the war, her favorite brother. And now she was losing her daughter. And I will tell you that when she arrived in the United States, it was not what she expected. And I don't think that she had any expectations. She just knew that this was something that, out of fear, that we have to leave, because of the other factor was that I'm an Amerasian child. And the rumors were that the Amerasian children that were born from the GIs with Vietnamese women would be tortured or killed, or even that she would be tortured or killed.
Wow.
There was just a lot of fear surrounding it. So that there was this sense of, I have to leave. And, so if I lose one, do I lose another daughter if I stay? Potentially. So there was a lot. And during war, I think it's one of those times that it's just so, I just disagree with the whole decision about war at any point, because of the lives that it impacts. And it's a traumatic impact for years to come and generations to come.
Yes.
And so with her dealing with it, and then I deal with it, and then even the impact that I have as myself, as my learning from my mother and my mothering tendencies. That's something that I think that a lot of the reason why I followed the path that I did, even taking that corporate route, that I knew that I wanted to create a better life. And if I did it this way, then maybe as a mother, I would be a better person if I did this. So from my mother, I learned a lot of what not to do or what I didn't want to be. But in doing that, I was rejecting my sense of even myself. Right?
Yeah.
Because those are the things that make all those things that happen to us when we're children ultimately create the person that we are today. And can we be really cognizant and really aware of who we are and appreciate, no matter where or what has happened to us or where we are in our time of our life, to be more self-accepting and have that self-love and be self-forgiving.
Well, and that takes tuning in, so, my feeling is that we have these patterns or wounds or things that we need to address, and my actual belief is that we come into this life to address exactly those things. Like we come in with the setup, like this is what's going to happen. And now you're going to roll with that, and come back to love. But, regardless of whether you believe that or not, it's true that these events happen in our life to highlight to us what's unresolved, what needs healing. And the job is to now, tune into that. And so many times it's, something's happening in your life right now that's traumatic or that's unpleasant or your body's reacting or whatever it is. And it actually has to do 9 times out of 10 with something that happened to you earlier in your life, usually in childhood, that, a message or an agreement or some belief got implanted in you. And now it's like manifesting in this physical way, this physical experience, make you like, hey, pay attention.
Well, and the pattern that whatever it is that keeps on showing up for us until we learn that, right? So, and what's interesting, I've really learned that in our DNA, that we have our bodies are so smart, right? That it really heals itself. It's really our emotions that we hang on to or our mental beliefs, the programming and conditioning that we believe, that's that graining, that story that we keep telling ourselves that holds us back. So our bodies are like, let's keep going forward. And yet I think it's the emotional stuff that we harbor in our bodies that keeps us from actually progressing forward.
I want to stop and just say, like, okay, so right before we got on the call, I was telling Bernie, and this is a perfect time to bring this up. It's like the body is so obvious, it's so wise that it's simple. Like, whatever the agreement is that you have, it'll make it obvious for you to figure it out that, hey, you're still holding on to this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday for the, you know, this was recorded in August, right? So for the full moon we had in August, that was a lunar eclipse. And on that day, I released a lot of projections that I remember people putting on me, you know, like things that people said about me that I don't want to carry around anymore. Cause I'm like, you know what, I released that. That's not me. So I had this whole ritual around releasing those projections and stepping into my own power and filling up with love. Cause I am love. That's the truth. We are all love. That's what we are. Well, I forgot one, funny enough, you know, and it's so funny because it's usually the ones that are so embedded, like you heard them all the time, that they're just like the water, you know, and you're the fish and you're swimming around in the water of this thing and you can't even see it because it's like, well, it's water, you know. I woke up this morning and my neck and my shoulder just like, they've been hurting for days, but they just like locked up. Like I had so much pain in my neck. And as my sweetheart was kind of just trying to help me with it, massage it, send it love, you know, tuning in because he's also an energy healer, he was kind of getting at it. He was touching a place that all of a sudden I realized, wait, this is emotional. This is emotional, mental. And at the moment I realized that, it came into my mind. Years, my mom would always say, you're a pain in the neck. And like, it's so interesting because if I look back through my life, like anytime I've expanded or gotten bigger or more brave or more courageous, like I'm going to like go out there and like do something, like be seen or share a message or be strident or, you know, be in my power, that my neck will start hurting.
Oh, interesting.
Because when I was a kid, if I was doing those things, if I was basically being me and I wasn't like being what she wanted, which was quiet and reading a book and being in my room, you know, whatever that she was like easier for her to handle. If I was being me and all my bigness, I was a pain in the neck.
Oh my gosh. That is so crazy.
So releasing that. And I totally, even wherever this broadcast is, just send love. Just send love to yes, I can feel it releasing. Okay. Just keep doing it. Okay.
Well, I mean, you know what, when you talk about that, it's not only just the physical manifestation of what our bodies are so smart telling us, right? If we learned that to tap into our intuition, as far as what are those things that are supposed to be bubbling up, and even what's interesting about what you said, reminding yourself of what your mother used to say. So going back to that courtyard in Vietnam, I stopped being a kid in that moment because I thought that playing was going to lead to something bad.
Because you weren't paying attention and you were playing instead of looking after your sister. Oh my gosh. So now you're not a kid anymore. Like playing is bad.
Yes. And the way that I felt it manifest, anytime that I was playing, I could feel it in my heart. Like,
something bad's going to happen.
My chest would start to restrict because it's like, no, don't play. Don't do anything outside of, your responsibility. And so when you said that, I realized, like, even talking about it in the whole, going back into that scenario, I'm like, I feel my heart restricting. And instead of like, wait a second, I was just a kid, I was innocent, that had nothing to do with me. There was a different path my sister had taken, and really to forgive myself in that moment so that I could recognize that whenever my heart restricts and I want to step out and actually enjoy and in fun and doing stuff that I want to do, that it's okay, and to pay attention to that. I think that's something that's really important, Carrie, that with what our body's telling us, to go into our intuition and remember what it is that's drawing us to feel that way in the first place, so we can push through it.
Absolutely. And for me, like, as I do this work, I haven't yet figured out how to just like snap my fingers and be done with it. I was looking forward to that solution, but it's like working through it at multiple layers, and I think the big choice, the first big step is the awareness. Like once you're aware of it, you can start noticing, okay, so now I'm going to be hyper aware. Like anytime it's stiff, I'm going to be like, okay, am I stepping out and being bigger? And am I somehow in my subconscious telling myself, you're a pain in the neck, stop it?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like, because I'm my mother's inside of
Right.
me. Like I've got a version of my mom that lives inside of me, goes everywhere with me, you know, like we all do. And she's in there saying the same thing she said, like my whole life growing up, right?
Oh, so curious. I have a question for you. Is your mother still alive?
Yes. I need
Okay.
to, but if I told her this, she takes everything, she takes a lot of things personally. Poor my mother, God bless her. She's really worked. She had, you know, I wonder if she got this from her mother. This is the thing, because
Oh, yes.
I had this idea, Bernie. I had this idea, and it's going to be super vulnerable, but I think I'm going to go visit my mom, but she doesn't live that far away. And I'm going to just go tell her, you are not a pain in the neck. You're a beautiful person, and I love you.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Because I feel like she's the one who needs that gift, because only anyone would ever say that. I realized last night as I released all those projections, nobody in love would ever say those things to someone that they loved.
You're so right.
They would never say that. And in her mind, she never did, you know, because we love our children. Like we're not aware of the shadow, except we catch
Oh,
ourselves.
the shadow, which we all have. We all have that.
We all have
that
it.
light, and we all have that shadow side. But I think we tend to want to just, I think sometimes we get so caught up in wanting to move forward and be in the light that, again, if we're not addressing what that shadow is, and even giving that love, right? That we're not actually in what, so it's kind of correlation to what you're saying, like going to your mother and realizing that what she was telling you was in her mind, what she was feeling about herself.
You know, let's go back to your miscarriages, right? Because here's this really interesting. When we don't pay attention the first time, like the first time it happens, we're still sort of holding on to like what we want, right? We're still like, I'm ignoring that. I'm moving past it because I'm still going after what I want.
Yes.
And that's what so many of us do. Like, I think when our body is giving us a message like that, is to tune in the moment that you're feeling,
Yes.
you know, it's like, oh, okay, what is this about? This is a message for me. It's not just something inconvenient that I don't want.
You know, I don't know if this helps other women who've experienced the miscarriages, because when my mother had told me that, she said, you know, if you can forgive yourself for the miscarriages, because I didn't understand what she was saying at the time. Now, my mother passed away in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things that she told me that I didn't pay attention to at the time, I'm paying more attention to now.
Yes, of course.
I still think she's registering messages to me that and we have the best relationship now.
It's a wonderful relationship.
And what I realized is that there had to be there was a gift in the miscarriages. And that was, again, when I said about the cosmic 2x4, that it was the gift of whatever the soul was that said, and I might get a little emotional about this, that said, I love you so much that if you don't get it this time, I'm going to make sure you get it the next time. And I'm going to come back. And if you don't get it again, I'm going to do it again so that you really get the message. And what I recognized is that in that gift, there was no way that I could have emotionally handled those pregnancies. There was no way my body at the time, I was so weak and stressed. And I don't think it would have been fair for the baby to come into an environment that was just not really ideal in the feasibility of like being able to pour love into a baby if I didn't have that for myself.
So let's talk about what you did next, because this was a huge, profound realization for you, that your body was sending you messages that you needed to love yourself, that you needed to fill yourself, that the way that you were living was not working for you actually, that, you know, maybe from your mind you thought it was, but your body was saying, no, this isn't work.
My spirit was saying, you're not honoring yourself.
Mm.
You are not being congruent. And really the authenticity, I was not being truly who I was being. And I was being a different person in that workforce, in that workplace. And it was a very toxic environment. So my body was saying, this is not where you're meant to be, and to push myself out. And after that, I did begin on a real true spiritual path of searching out, like, well, what were those miscarriages about? Why was this happening to me? What did I create to have this big hello, like you're not waking up to what your purpose is? So after that, I actually, for 2 years, was very unsuccessful in trying to find a new job. And in that place of kind of like going deep into depression, I've also found that as a gift, that the depression was really actually allowing me to kind of really awaken to, well, what is this feeling about? And I found that I wanted more answers. And so in doing so, I said, I've always loved movies, and maybe there's something into maybe finding a way to tell a story of people who have been on that path and are helping others through their difficult transitions. And so there was a friend of ours, Harrison Klein, who actually called me, and he was really persistent and pestered me about, you got to come to India because you want to be able to come in on this conference. And when I told him that I was looking for a subject matter on spirituality, but I wanted some science involved, he said, well, this conference is about the science of spirituality.
Well, let me ask you, was it really? Or was he saying that?
It was, the title was the science of spirituality.
Okay.
But a lot of our friends that were going, and I knew Jennifer Huff, I knew Harrison, and then I met his lovely partner, Marbeth Dunn. And so I just felt like this was like starting to pay attention in that place of like, I have nothing to lose, right? I've got to go follow. What is this calling that I'm to do something around this movie and to go to some place that I'd never been to? And why would anybody with a corporate career even try to attempt a documentary as a first-time filmmaker during the recession where I'm not working? And oh, by the way, it happens to be over the Christmas holidays.
Oh, great. You get to abandon your family to go do it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, my husband and my 2 sons, I had decided shortly after Thanksgiving that I'm going to do this. And so I had a very small time to actually put everything together for a production plan. And because I didn't have the money, I didn't have time to raise it. And then everybody in the film industry says, don't spend your own money. Go and get funding and investors. I didn't have any of that time. So I just maxed out my credit card and said, I'm going to do this. I just have faith that I have to do this. I can't explain why. I just have to do this. And so I did. I went and December, mid-December, went to India and realized that I would be gone over the holidays, and it was really heavy on my heart. But I'm so glad that when I arrived and started meeting everyone, what was happening for me is that I could tell that things were not going as my plan had hoped. Because in the corporate world too, it was very much you put everything into a plan so that, with a budget and the timing of where I wanted to go for my film crew. So I had everything, my ducks in a row, so I thought. And the tour that we had were supposed to be on after this conference had been canceled for some reason. And I'm supposed to meet my film crew based on this tour. So I'm in a full-on panic, and I'm thinking, I've spent all this money. My husband is not happy about it. He doesn't understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, he thinks you're crazy. I had so many crazy words from my ex-husband. You couldn't survive it, but I'm glad you did.
Well, and I think because we had supported each other through our marriage, through different crises. And so he said, okay, you need to go do this, I suppose. I'll let you know. He just was trying to help me sort through, I think probably through the miscarriages and the state of depression I was in. So when we were in the beginnings of the conference, I'm realizing that, okay, even the planning of like, I was supposed to interview all these teachers, these speakers, and it wasn't happening. And the tour is being canceled. I'm like, I just risked so much, and I don't even have a documentary. So I really went into a panic, but because my body was starting to feel all this anxious, I'm not showing it because, again, I think in the corporate world, we're always about wanting never to let anybody see you sweat. right? And not really telling people like I'm about on the verge of a meltdown here. So one of the interviews that I have, it is really telling me that it's with the documentary that I planned to actually film was not what was going to be. But in my mindset, I didn't understand that. I was still so much in my head and wanting to control things, and being a control freak because, that my job always rode on that, like being able to make sure that everything was complete and there was a measured result. So when we started on our tour, it was when Jennifer Hough actually came into play. We were leaving the conference in Hyderabad, India, and we were on our way to see the Taj Mahal in Agra. And we're on this 6-hour drive in a van, and so we stopped to make a pit stop. And there was something about the idea of seeing a cobra that was going to set me off, because I'd already envisioned that I knew I was going to India. I was probably going to have a panic attack when I saw a cobra, but I had no idea what was going to happen. So when I actually see the cobra and I see that my cameraman is out filming the cobra and I see that the cobra is striking the cameraman, I'm thinking that cobra is attacking my cameraman and I'm next. That cobra wants to come after me next. I'm 100 yards away, but I know that cobra is looking for me. And because I'm surrounded by all these spiritual teachers, fortunately, they're looking at me like, what is happening to you? What's the big deal? The cobra is just another creature of God. Like, it's no big deal. And it's where Jennifer was recognizing that there was something really big and integral happening to me, that she took the time to actually question, what is really happening? What's going on? What are you really afraid of? And in that moment, I realized that when she had asked me if I was afraid of dying, that my response was that dying seemed really easy, that I didn't want to die before I actually really lived. And that seemed really hard. Yeah. And so that's what this line of questioning from Jennifer was all about. Well, what is that really? What is it that you're afraid of? And so that this need to want to control things, because back in that courtyard when I was a little girl and I let go, that trouble ensued. Something bad would happen if I wasn't in control, if I wasn't super responsible, if I wasn't following the path that I thought everybody else wanted me to live. And so in that moment with that cobra, it was as though I felt like my heart was constricting again. But in this time, it was like this release. Later that night, Carrie, I'm watching the footage of that interaction that Jennifer and I have with the cobra. And instead of looking at the cobra in absolute fear, I actually have compassion, because I'm recognizing that cobra that had been caged in a basket was actually trying to escape.
Yeah.
It was not that fierce and fearful looking creature. It was, I'm caged in a basket. I'm a prisoner and I'm not free. And I realized that I had put myself in a basket, that I had put myself in that same position of not feeling free. And then I needed to release that feeling of that little girl who was afraid to live life. And really in that moment, really feeling encouraged that, maybe that there was a story for me to tell. And because that I was so wonderfully guided by Jennifer, that I even had the sense of confidence that maybe I was enough to actually be the protagonist in telling this story. And that with my difficult transition, could I be the reason that others could relate to? And because of that decision, through the rest of the trip through India, I'm actually sitting down with each of the spiritual teachers, but we're guiding my journey through India. And the movie actually documents my transformation.
Wow.
So that you're actually seeing a very different Berni from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. And watching that whole acceptance and forgiveness and self-love, and it really, and every time I watch it still, Carrie, it just fills me with so much joy, because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I was actually not only the person who was directing and producing this film, but to be able to be the main crux of the story. I was the hero in my own journey. It was
And
pretty
you
amazing.
get to shine, like you get to be center stage and really live, it's your journey. You get to claim
Which
it.
which I love about this, Carrie, is the whole experience was that, I didn't want to go to India thinking that it was about my story, right? I didn't want to go for that reason. It was all about other people. Because in my state of control, I would have been rehearsing about being in front of the camera, right? Like, am I articulating? Am I being journalistic enough when I do the interviews, conduct the interviews with the spiritual teachers? And I probably would have lost 10 pounds because camera tends to add the weight. But you know what? It wouldn't have been authentic. It would have not been authentic. And people, when they talk about the beautiful transformation that they witnessed, they're thinking about their own story and their own journey. And the beauty of it was that was what I was meant to do. I was meant to go on that journey in India and tell my story. And the convergence of what that Cobra did for me was that I was in two different courtyards. And as a little girl, I was in the courtyard that restricted me from life. And being in another courtyard with the Cobra that brought me to my knees in fear actually brought me back to life.
I love that. I love it at so many levels. I love it because I love how spirit works. You
Yes.
think that one thing's going to happen, and from your small self, your personality, you're like trying to make that happen. You're trying to force it into being. And, and spirit just like laughs. Isn't that cute? And then you have this experience that's so profound, it just blows your doors off, but it liberates you, and if we can really, it sounds like you melted into the experience. And that's what's really beautiful, is because if you can relax into it and you realize you're being held by a loving force that's so much bigger than you are, that knows you and knows exactly what you came here to learn, knows everything about you. And
Yes.
not only that, but has you in the palm of its hand. Like, you're fine.
Well, and what I learned is that through a different lens, I was watching the Cobra from safely behind the camera. When I was in the moment with the camera, with the Cobra, I thought that Cobra was trying to attack me. But seeing through a different lens, I saw the Cobra was trying to get away. And then I realized that through life, what lens was I looking through? So there's this tendency as a little person that, immediately I was a victim. And I tended to wear that through my life because that's what I learned. But through a new lens, I see that even finishing the movie and watching my story and what it means to actually go through transformation, but also sharing that experience with others, I could tell a totally different story.
Well,
right?
What's really beautiful about this metaphor is that so many of us are as powerful. We're all as powerful as that Cobra. We're all as powerful as the creature. We're as powerful as a big bear. I don't know if I told you my big bear story, but we're as powerful as the big bear. We're as powerful as, these amazing forces of nature that we are. And then what we do is we put ourselves in a basket and put the lid on and walk around crippled. And some aspect of us knows that and is completely resentful, and that's where depression comes from, because it's like, I'm blocking. I know I'm doing this to myself, but I don't know why.
Yes. It's very much why is this happening to me? What is going on? Why is this happening to me?
Projecting it outwards, like the world is mean and it's doing this to me. And it's it's some deep level, you're doing it to yourself. Like we're all doing it to ourselves, whatever it is we're doing, like this pain in my neck, my shoulders, that got there because subconsciously I'm like telling myself, hey, you need to stop believing this. This is what it feels like. Like I'm doing it to me. It's not,
I totally believe that there's an element of detachment that again, with the whole body telling us that you're holding on to something so much that what does it take to wake you up? And for me, that all those things that were leading into the point in that moment with the Cobra, to finishing the movie, to actually, in post-production, I still had to finish it. And as I was finishing it and watching my life on screen and having to decide, how am I going to tell the story? What do I want to include? What I don't want to include? There are things where I said, I don't want other people knowing about this, because I was so attached to my story.
Your identity.
So attached. Absolutely.
Your projected identity. Like they call that the image of perfection in the Toltec tradition.
Yes. Oh, and I was so concerned. What are people going to be thinking about me? I know I have to finish this movie, but I don't want to go too deep. And I was
But if you don't go deep, if you cut yourself off at the knees and you don't go deep with it, then it sort of ends up just being like, it doesn't really hit the mark.
Well, that's the bingo that I learned. That moment in finishing the film was realizing, like, you know what? If I was to go to a movie and watch the hero live a perfect life, that would be so boring, and there would be nothing interesting, and there was no way that I could relate to that person.
Because it's not true. Because it's like, that's what I can't stand about a lot of these, when you, see, I know you're not this way, Bernie. That's why I'm going to say it on this broadcast. But there's a lot of, coaches and stuff out there like that project the image of perfection. Like if you come coach with me, your life will be like, it's like everything's working. It's all perfect, and it's like, I am so perfect. And now let me teach you, my disciples, and it's like, no.
I'm so glad you said that, Carrie. I'm really glad you said that.
It's not true.
Because people that I work with, not only do they get to see the movie and they see my, all my flaws.
Messy process.
Yes, because that's what they relate to. And they can see that I'm inviting them to join my journey, because then when we work on them, on their personal journey, that's why the burning journey is inside all of us. Because it's going to be messy. Transformation can be really painful. But starting on that journey, being awakened and aware, the beauty of what happens when somebody realizes and starts to look through a new lens, that they are starting to write and re-script their life, right? So the things that happened to us in the past, there's some detachment that we can release and be able to use all those wonderful things that actually did happen for us, not to us, but happened for us, to give us the fortitude of who we are today. Because if I wouldn't have had the things that happened to me were really happening for me, in the sense that I had the strength and the wherewithal to finish the film, and to really even sitting in the post-production in the editing bay and say, okay, I'm all right with this story to go out. And I'm so glad I did, because when people watch the film, in which I want to share that with your viewers, I would love to share my film.
I'm so glad you are that. Thank you for doing that. And you actually won some awards for that film too, I think. So
I did. And I think that was, what was interesting about it, Carrie, was that it wasn't about the awards. What I love about it is that it gets recognition for being a really quality product of, that I worked with some amazing people to give some high quality editing and storytelling. I'm so forever grateful, because I didn't do this movie by myself, even though, that the story is about me.
Bernie. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to be your coach for a second. Receive.
I will soak that in.
Soak it in right now. Okay, viewers, everybody, send Bernie love for being willing to transparently and vulnerably share her truth on camera for the whole world.
Thank you for that, Carrie. Yes, I'm very proud that it is award-winning. And I'm also proud of the fact that, because when people view the movie, they know that there's their own story that they're watching.
Yes.
And that
they can identify it because you're being real. This is why when I go live on Facebook, like sometimes I show up in my jammies and my hair is all like bedhead, because I like refuse to look perfect. I don't want, like, I'm breaking myself of it. It's like, no. Like, I will intentionally be sloppy and messy because I want to give, the more I'm that way, I let myself free of my own perfectionist tendencies. All the years I spent looking in front of the mirror to make sure I was perfect, like getting my mom laughs at me because in junior high, we had like the feathered hair thing.
Yes.
At Farrah Fawcett was really big when I was in junior high. And I would try to, and I have curly, this is my natural hair. My hair is curly. And I live
Gosh,
in
I
New
love it.
England. New England where it's humid. Can you just imagine it for a second? I would blow dry my hair to like absolutely dry, feather it, and then I would use a whole can of Aquanet to keep it in place. I would actually like place them all
Oh, sure. That was the
place
style.
just to be accepted like everybody else. And I spent so many hours in front of the mirror. Like I would even practice expressions in front of the mirror. Like I would practice conversations and then like watch my face and make sure that it's doing what I want.
Carrie, what's so funny is that there were times where, because I didn't have a hairdresser or makeup person for the movie. And there were times where I would tell my editor, we can't use that shot because look, I didn't even comb my hair there. And he's like, no, we're keeping it in just the way it is. That's part of the story.
Real. And
Yes.
actually, I want people to know, like when I do these broadcasts, I've got my laptop set up. Now this is all going to change. So I'm getting a new laptop. Yay me. But like I've got my camera right there set up. And right behind it is the computer screen. So, and I've got Bernie's face like right aligned with the camera. So the whole time I'm looking in the camera, but I'm also looking at Bernie. I'm not even looking at me, but you'll notice like throughout, I'll just totally wrap myself out. You'll notice that I like look over like that. Because periodically I check myself.
Of course, because we're like, wait a second, are we like in position? How's the lighting?
Yeah.
And that's just part of the perfectionist. But the beauty of it now is that the cool thing at the end of the day, even when you're rewatching this broadcast with the interview.
And I always rewatch them too. But like I used to do it much more obsessively and now I just watch back and I laugh, which is a good thing.
Well, but then viewers are going to absolutely relate to you more because they're not looking at somebody who's projecting an image that's unreal, right? So, and that's probably the biggest thing, that the takeaway that I would have is that when I actually sat down and watched my film on screen at the premiere, and I was so blessed to have it was a full theater, and we actually had 3 sold out shows for that premiere. I was watching my movie and I'm thinking, my gosh, in that moment of in that detachment I was talking about, like detaching from the results of the film and my story and what are people going to think about me, I saw myself truly as the hero, as the star of my life. Not only was I directing the movie, I'm really directing my life, and watch, my story is up there and I can actually be proud that I think that if people saw themselves as the star of their own movie, I know that's such a hard thing to think about, but if we just detached from our stories and just lived life as though we were just watching a movie and accepting everything that happens as part of the wonderful story. Because I think on my deathbed, I can be able to say like, oh my gosh, you would not believe what happened here in Vietnam. And then when I went to India and then with the children, that I want to be able to share those stories and not say, well, I just don't have anything interesting to tell. And I think so many of us are wanting to live this projected perfect life.
Whatever that means.
But that's not what we're here for.
No.
It's not what we're here for. And all of us have such important stories. And that's the thing, is that if we all knew that all of us have felt pain, that we felt joy, that we felt less than, and that really we are all more than that already. And I think that's the big thing that I learned, is that people said, well, you really did an extraordinary thing. And I don't feel that I did anything extraordinary, because people are making movies all the time. Right? In my sense, my circle, probably because of the corporate world, but I felt as though that really the moment that I became extraordinary is when I stepped in my power and said, I'm worthy enough to tell this story and be the hero of this movie. And in doing that, I felt more authentic than I ever had in my life. Mm-hmm. And that I felt that I'd found purpose. And I think that's what's extraordinary, because I don't feel that all of us do that. And really, if we just saw things as ordinary, making a movie, that's just ordinary. It's not as overwhelming for us to think that nothing is possible, that everything is possible. Everything is absolutely possible. So I think it's just the saying's backward. We're really extraordinary doing the ordinary. And so I hope the viewers really soak that in.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I love it because it resonates with everything I've learned from the Toltec path about being the artist of your life. But, it's everything Don Miguel Ruiz says in the Four Agreements. You are the artist of your life. And how is that? You're the actor, you're the watcher, you're the producer, you're the director, it's
the writer,
you're the writer, like you're everything. And so like one of my little slogans I use is, write an epic life, because that's how I started scripting my life. And that's what I actually have, this secret burning desire. It's not totally secret because it's written on my dream board, but I have this secret desire that I actually, my story, The Awakening to Me, gets made into a movie and I get an Oscar.
It's always possible. If you believe it, right?
I'm throwing it out there. Yeah, I'm releasing the audio version of my book. So I'm really excited about that. It's done. It's complete. And the only thing is me like standing on the high dive board go, do I jump? Do I jump?
Yes.
Do I jump? So I finally did. I finally jumped. But, it was because of you. We were talking when we talked like a couple weeks ago, and you're like encouraging me, like, go ahead, like claim the spotlight, go do it, because I'm so comfortable in this forum. Like I'm really comfortable being behind a screen and in my home, in my fabricated environment here, and like being vulnerable on the screen and interviewing other people. And I'm comfortable like on Facebook Live, like doing my little, Facebooks, but like be with real people, be on their show and they interview me. Like what? So,
Carrie, I always joke about this, but it's really true. I joked about the fact that I went to India in the land of gurus, right? But really at the end of the day, I was my own best guru.
You are your own best guru.
Yes.
It's so true for all of us.
All of us.
These are just tools, and this gets back to the whole coach thing. Like, what do you need? You do hire mentors. I do. I've worked with mentors, but the biggest thing is the best mentors are the ones that help you find yourself and give you like some tools for your toolbox that you can use. So, here's some more awesome tools. Now go, like that's the best.
I also discovered though that when working with my clients, there's two things that hold us back from what I think, whatever fears from our experiences. And there's either the path of like, we're not worthy, or the sense of not being good enough. And I understand there's a distinction, that the worthiness is all about what's internalized, that no matter what somebody tells us, we're not going to believe it until we believe it. Versus the person who says, I'm not good enough. And when they're looking for the external validation, that they feel encouraged to go ahead and do it and feel good enough because somebody else believed in them.
Yes. So here's what the shamans do. Because I worked with the shamans, part of my training is energy medicine with the Caro shamans from Peru. This is what they say. They say you hold people in their highest image of themselves. You hold the highest good and the highest intention for everyone you meet, because in fact they are love and they are perfect in their higher selves. They are that, and you just hold them there until they can claim it for themselves.
Yes. Well, that's the difference of being able to know what is really charging us, right? To be able to let go of those fears and detach, and to be able to support one another the way that it is needed to be supported. And I think once we start to really detach from those fears, detach from what people are going to think about us, that's the piece that, again, I just feel that if everyone understood that beauty and the gifts that we bring to this lifetime and those experiences that we have are meant to be shared in some way. So whether it's through a movie, through your book, through art and paint, or through photography, however it is that people want to express themselves. And even through numbers, the people who are number people, however they're creative in that way.
Or even at the hair salon, because somebody's going to overhear it. Here's what I want to encourage people, because I know you were just talking about, putting the things in your book that, was uncomfortable for you in your movie that was uncomfortable for you. Knees shaking, I'm sure, right? Just like,
oh yes,
I can't share that.
Knees shaking, the funny tummy, like, oh my gosh, this doesn't feel good.
So but once you did it, big sensation of release, right? Like freedom.
Carrie, I was like, what was the big deal?
Exactly. So that's
what are you worried about?
And I felt the same way. Actually, when I was writing my memoir, I was writing it along the way because Spirit told me to start writing as you're evolving and transforming, because you won't be the same person at the end of the book. Same thing as your movie. You won't be the same at the end as you were at the beginning, and people will see the transformation in the text. So start now. And I was like, oh, okay, that's so wise, like whatever. So I started writing. And along the way, there were some things, like there was one thing, one of my friends at the time, he was like, you can't put that in the book. He's like, don't write about me. I'm like, I'm writing about you. And I can write, and I need to put that in the book. It needs to go in there because it's a point of integrity. It's a point of honesty. It's a point of coming home to self. Like, I need to share that. It's important. And I was terrified too. Like, my knees were shaking. I was trembling. I felt subconscious, like the tummy, the whole thing. And I was even nervous all the way up until publishing. And the moment I published it, I was like, well, it's done now.
Yeah.
Like,
it's out there.
Like, it's out there now. So it's okay. So,
the fun thing about that, though, is that that hurdle, right? Just that one hurdle, and we're continuing to expand as a result of it. And then being able to say, like, well, I guess people really didn't. It's like we're our own fears again. Like,
nobody attacked me. I thought for sure, like, by now, but the things I put in that book, that people would have attacked me by now. Not one. I've been so held and loved by the Great Spirit. It's crazy. It's like amazing to me. It's just like, love you so much.
Because you're rewarded for being authentic and telling your truth.
And people empathize with that, and they see themselves in it. Even if they didn't do half the crazy things I did, they read it and they go, oh my gosh. Like, and I've had people reach out to me and say, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and transparent. Because you shared that, now I feel empowered to be facing my own truth, because you survived it. If you survived all that, like, I can survive what I've gone through, and I'm empowered by that. So I think you're right. I think we're the way showers, and we need to encourage people to share their truth, share their stories.
Yes. And I will say that there's a wonderful friend of mine who, in the moment where I said, I'm really getting nervous, the movie's almost done, and I don't know if I can really share this movie. And he said lovingly to me, he said, Berni, you really need to get over yourself. And he said, if you hold back on this movie, you're holding back on the potential of helping and serving someone else who just needed to have some kind of inspiration, and to recognize that they're not alone. You never know what kind of impact you would have made for that individual who could have maybe done something to save the world. So when he put it in that context for me, that, wait a second, I'm playing small if I'm not willing to put myself out there, because in the playing big means that I'm actually helping somebody else potentially with my story. And if they can help someone else, and we're all connected. And so when we're able to actually, that collective consciousness of helping and raising each other up, right? So that's why, yes, immediately the lens shifted for me again. It was like, you're right. I can't play small and hold myself back. That we're doing ourselves good, and we're doing
I'm squirming in my seat, but you're so right. Okay. I'm squirming. It's so true. I'm doing it, Berni. I'm doing it. I told you I would. Okay, guys. Oh, so vulnerable. I'm feeling it all in my body right now. Oh, the excitement of this ripping off the cape. Hello. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Berni. And I know, so tell us again, your film. So tell us what your offer is again.
Berni's Journey. And I'm happy to extend a free DVD offer.
That is so generous.
Listeners. And so all they have to do is pay for shipping and handling. They can go to my website, www.bernisjourney.com. Now, Berni is without an E, just like Carrie with an I. It's Berni I. So Berni's Journey is BERNIS journey.com. And just select on the free or when you go to select the DVD, use promo code Soul Nectar, and it'll just take a couple days. And then once you have a chance to, the viewers watch the film, please reach out.
Yeah, please give the film a review, because that really helps. That
Yes.
really helps to get the word out to more people. And, even share it on your timeline, because this is such a generous offer. Like, share it out on social media, plug it to some friends, share it with some people that, could really use this inspiration.
Yes, please.
So these are some really amazing spiritual teachers that joined Berni on her own, stepping into, her own teaching, her own spiritual journey and coaching. So
Yes.
share, and promote this wisdom. So thank you guys so much. I want to give everybody kisses. You want to join me?
Yes.
Okay. So I always give people kisses. So here they come, people. Get ready for the kisses. And you can send them back too if you want to. I'll receive them through the ethers. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Love you guys. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Carrie.